What's the creepiest thing you've seen in the middle of nowhere? When I was a weird teenager, I had this strange thing that I would just take night walks in areas with no lights, mostly forest walking paths. My logic then was facing fears and feel awesome after. On one night, it was pitch black, could really not see far. So I was doing my thing, and I just bumped into someone else. Saw him at the very last moment. I just screamed and started running back only to hear him chasing me. I could hear the sound of his footsteps. Then after a while, they became more distant. I did a Forrest Gump and just kept running. Never went for a night forest walk again. Thinking back, my guess would be that he was perhaps a forest ranger or something. Back then, I figured serial killer.
That's a wild experience. Night walks in the woods can sound calming but end up being the opposite. Running from someone you can't see must have been intense. It's funny how our minds jump to the worst-case scenarios. I guess that's a solid reason to stick to day walks after that. Kinda makes you appreciate the light, huh? Glad you made it out without too much drama.
Hundreds of bones from different animals up the mountains in rural Ireland. It is obviously normal to see a skeleton in the wilderness, but this huge pile of bones was just odd. Some were from sheep, but others looked like cats, dogs, rodents. It was bizarre as we don't have predatory animals in Ireland. The only thing that could have gathered slash put them, there was a person.
That's a strange scene for sure. I've stumbled upon odd stuff in nature, but a pile of bones like that raises some questions. You'd usually expect to find a few remains here and there, but a mix like that feels off. Makes you wonder about the backstory behind it all. Kind of gives off a creepy vibe, too. Definitely a place I'd avoid after that.
My job is conducting various types of environmental surveys, and those are frequently in isolated areas of wilderness. The creepiest thing we've seen is the remains of an abandoned campsite. It was clearly several years old, but everything was still there. Tent, sleeping bag, pillow, cooking utensils, firewood pile, etc. It's like they decided to walk away and never went back for their things. It was about an hour walk from civilization, so probably a little too far for a hobo camp, although we've come across several of those too.
That's wild. Finding an old campsite like that can really make you think. It's strange to picture someone just leaving everything behind. I guess it adds an eerie vibe to the wilderness, making it feel more isolated. You really never know what happened there. I wonder if they had an emergency or just decided to leave. It's a reminder that nature takes back its space pretty quickly.
An abandoned elementary school in the middle of the woods. I found it when I was around 10 years old while exploring at my dad's hunting club in the backwoods of Alabama. The odd thing about it was that it didn't seem to have a road leading to it or even a place to park cars, but everything inside was from the 60s and 70s. It also seemed to be abandoned quickly. Books were still opened on desks, shoes still in the cubbies, and papers still on the teachers' desks. I actually took a lot of the books that weren't weather damaged and brought them home with me. I remember asking my dad about it a few years later, and he knew about it, but said it gave him the creeps, so he never went near it. My dad left that hunting club a year later, so I never had the chance to check it out a second time.
That sounds like a pretty interesting experience. Finding an old school like that, especially in the woods, must have felt eerie. It's strange that everything was left behind when it seemed so intact. I get why your dad wouldn't want to go near it though. It's the kind of place that sticks with you. It's too bad you couldn't explore it again after he left the club. Those books you took probably have some cool stories in them.
I was hiking deep in a forest, sticking to the path. It was evening, sun low over the horizon. Making my way back out of the woods when I see something hanging in a nearby tree. So I want to take a look for curiosity's sake. It was a baby doll head. Looked up and there were hundreds of baby doll heads in the tree. The few I could see clearly seemed old with dirt smudged on them, but a few seemed clean and new. I heard rapid footsteps approaching and I hightailed it out of there. Why someone hung up hundreds of doll heads in a tree deep in the forest, I have no idea.
That's pretty wild. Finding a bunch of doll heads like that is unsettling. I mean, it's just one of those moments where your mind starts racing. I wouldn't stick around to figure it out either. I've had my own creepy encounters in the woods, but that beats mine. Sometimes you just walk away from weird stuff without looking back. Can't say I'd go hiking there again.
I was driving across country alone on the 10 and was in the middle of the desert. My car said I only had about 20 miles left in gas, so I pulled off to the first place I'd seen for the last hour. Since I was young, sick, and a woman, I made the rule that anytime I stopped for gas, I would only pay at the pump and would never leave my car or go inside anywhere aside from the hotels I stayed at. So I swipe my card, and as it's processing, the transaction cancels, and it prompts me to see the cashier. I try again, and halfway through typing in my zip code, it cancels and tells me again to see the cashier. I look towards the convenience store and see it has broken windows, is boarded up, and is completely abandoned. Even the tall station sign is torn apart. I spot someone inside peering at me from between the boards, and the second I see them, they jump away. They clearly didn't want to be seen, but kept trying to get me to come into the abandoned station by canceling the transaction. Nope. Got back in my car, and by some miracle, made it to the next station 30 miles away.
That's a tough situation. The isolation of the desert can make everything feel extra intense. It's smart to stick with your rules, especially if you feel vulnerable. Seeing someone in that abandoned station must have been eerie. Honestly, trusting your instincts like that saved you. It's good to know you made it to safety and found another gas station. Being cautious in strange places is always a solid move.
When I was about 11, we lived in an apartment complex with woods in the back that went straight uphill. A neighbor that we would talk to occasionally told us there was a cool playhouse or abandoned house, and he pointed in the direction. A few days later, my little brother and I walked in that direction. We came upon what really looked like a shallow grave and an old kid's sleeping bag. The grave was a patch of ground which seemed indented about 3 inches, like sunken in from the rest of the dirt around it in a very deliberate rectangle. The sleeping bag was off to the side of the clearing, and it was old and tattered. My gut told me to get the fuck out of there ASAP. I wish I would have told someone. Hope it was nothing.
That sounds unsettling. It's weird how you can stumble upon things that trigger all sorts of instincts. I can relate to that feeling of being curious but also really wanting to run. It makes you think about the stories behind places and what they might hold. Sometimes you just wish you could turn back time and take a different path. Better to play it safe in situations like that.
When I was a kid, my family and I were hiking in the mountains. We got to a small clearing at the dead end of a dirt road and saw a red convertible with its doors open. My dad said, "Wait guys, let's check this out." He walked around the car for a few seconds and then immediately turned and started speed walking back to us. He didn't even look at us, just said, "Let's go now." I was curious, so I started to walk over to the car and saw several bullet holes in the doors and blood on the seats. I ran back and said, "Dad, what happened?" And he said, "I don't know, but the hood was still warm." That still gives me chills. Edit, it's because bad grammar makes people angry.
That's pretty intense. A car like that doesn't just end up there without a story. I can see why your dad reacted the way he did. The bullet holes and blood would definitely raise some red flags. It's a strange feeling being in a place where something so serious might have happened. Memories like that stick with you. Good thing your dad was quick to get you all out of there.
I was camping about as far away from civilization as it's possible to get in the UK. Decided to do some fishing on a nice day. I had a clear view for miles, and someone managed to get near me without me noticing. Bright red huge coat on a hot as ball day. I tried saying hello, nothing. Tried saying hello in all the broken bits of languages I know, still nothing. My attention was taken by a fish taking. I turned away and back, and he was gone. No idea how, or where he disappeared.
That's a weird situation. You'd think a guy in a bright red coat would be hard to miss. It's funny how people just kind of appear and vanish, especially out in the wild. Maybe he was a ghost or something. Either way, at least you got some fishing done. Sometimes I think the weird encounters make these trips more memorable. Just a quiet day turned into a bit of a mystery.
One night, I was walking to my friend's house from my grandpa's. The fastest route was actually to cut through a trailer park surrounded by woods. There was a path if you knew the correct yard to trespass. Sneaking through a family's yard, I finally came to the edge of the woods, only to see 3 very distinct orbs of light about the size of softballs hovering in front of me. I froze and stared at them for some time, kind of squinting, cocking my head, etc., to see what the hell they were. I decided to approach them, and they flew away. I don't believe in ghosts or anything particularly supernatural, so I honestly have no idea what I saw that night.
That sounds eerie. It's always strange when you encounter something you can't explain. I had a similar experience once when I was out late in a park. I saw some lights flickering in the trees and just stood there, confused. Like you, I didn't believe in anything paranormal, but my mind started racing about what it could be. Sometimes the unknown just leaves you wondering.
About 20 years ago in somewhat North Ontario, Canada, I found a well in the middle of the forest. Thing is, my grandpa cut down all the logs to where our house was. It was a tall, massive forest with no contact from the outside world till he decided to build a house there. The well looked hundreds of years old.
That sounds interesting. Finding a well out in the middle of nowhere must have been quite the surprise. It's cool to think about how long it had been there, especially since your grandpa changed the whole area. It must have had some history behind it. I wonder if anyone ever used it before your grandpa built the house. Places like that can feel pretty mysterious.
Okay, so I used to work third shift at a blood processing center out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. On my way home at around 4:30-ish in the morning on a back-ass windy road, I saw something off in the distance. It was a dark figure, but I could tell it was pretty big. I can't see very well at night to begin with, but this particular night, it was really foggy out, and so I was squinting to try to see what was up ahead and didn't realize how fast I was approaching it. I had to brake kind of hard and swerve to miss it. It was a giant fucking pig that was standing in the middle of the road. Now, this honestly isn't what I would call creepy, but holy shit, it scared the fuck out of me. Shit was as big as my car.
That sounds wild. I can imagine driving in the fog and suddenly seeing something huge in the road. A giant pig would definitely catch anyone off guard. Not what you expect at that hour, especially after a long night shift. I'd probably be a bit shaken too. It's funny how animals can just wander into the wrong place. Glad you managed to swerve in time.
Once in high school, a friend of mine and myself were helping to do a lake/swamp cleanup for community service. This all happens in the middle of Louisiana. For context, we were walking down the road, filling our bags with garbage, when we looked down and saw a severed deer leg, fur and flesh still attached, and no other parts of the carcass nearby. We quickly solved the mystery when we spotted a gator den nearby. Baby alligators calling in the distance didn't really help us feel better about it either. As an aside, we also found an old watch, an unopened beer of a brand I'm sure they no longer made at the time, a fairly nice spoon, and a pair of underwear.
That sounds like quite the experience. I can imagine being in the middle of a cleanup and then stumbling on something like that. The severed deer leg must have been shocking. Finding random stuff like a watch and an unopened beer is just kind of odd, especially in a swamp. It makes you wonder what stories those items could tell. Definitely a day to remember, but I'd probably think twice about going back.
My husband and I were driving from Arizona to Chicago. We stopped at a McDonald's in a small town of Texas. I don't remember the name. One of the cooks was singing. The person at the counter thanked us for coming in. It was very clean. One of the other patrons heard us talking about needing to find a gas station and offered to let us follow him to the closest one. Everyone in this McDonald's was so over-the-top friendly, it actually freaked us out.
That sounds like a memorable stop. Sometimes you get these unexpected experiences while traveling. People can be incredibly helpful, especially in small towns. It's nice when you find a place where everyone seems genuinely friendly. Makes the journey more enjoyable, right? Just a simple meal, but it turned into a moment you'll remember. It's those little interactions that can change the vibe of a trip.
Was exploring an abandoned farm in the Midwest. Upstairs, there was poop everywhere and claw marks on the walls. At one point, I found a Fleet Farm bag. It looked like there was hair in it, and when I went to check it out, my girlfriend at the time stepped on a nail and screamed. We hurried out to get her foot all bandaged up before I could find out if there was a dead body in that bag.
That sounds pretty intense. Abandoned places can have some creepy surprises. Finding all that mess and then the nail thing must have been a rush. It's wild how quickly things can change from exploring to dealing with an injury. I get why you didn't check the bag after that. Safety first, I guess. Did you ever go back to see what was really in it?
I've seen threads like this before, but for whatever reason, I just thought of this. I was at my cousin's house, and he lived in the Bonnies on a huge ranch. There was this fairly large forest-type area near his house we would spend hours exploring. We were out there one time, and at some point he wanted to climb a tree, but since I was little I couldn't, so I wandered off. After a while I couldn't find my cousin, and I assumed he was at the top of a tree. So I'm looking up calling for him when I see what I think is him up in a tree. I call to him, and then I hear his voice behind me. He was walking towards me. The figure in the tree jumped to the next one, then scuttled down, and we heard it running off. My grandpa says it was probably a mountain lion.
That sounds like a classic childhood adventure. Getting lost in the woods can be spooky, especially when you think you see something up in a tree. It's funny how your mind can play tricks on you. Your cousin shows up just in time to give you a scare from both the tree and what might have been lurking around. It's good that your grandpa had an explanation for it all. A memorable day for sure.
Creepiest and probably the most beautiful. Interstate 1 in Canada during December in Manitoba. I don't know where we were. The bus stopped or rest stop, and we all got out to stretch out legs, Greyhound, not school. On the north side of the highway was a field of snow as far as I could see. It was so far and so still, with almost no wind, that the sky looked white, like it reflected snow instead of ocean. And I couldn't really see the divide between the horizon and the ground. It was like I was in the construct in the Matrix, just white, and like if I stepped off of the road, I might fall into it. It gave me vertigo, but was really pretty and scary. Just vast cold nothing.
That sounds intense. Just you, the stillness, and endless white. It must have felt surreal, like time stopped. I can picture the feeling of being so small in that space, how the quietness can be unsettling. Sometimes those stark landscapes remind us how vast and empty everything can be. It's cool how a moment like that sticks with you, combining beauty and a bit of fear at the same time.
This reminds me of the story about someone hiking a trail at night, and they stepped on something that felt strange, and they ran away. Later, someone interviewed Ted Bundy and asked him, "What's the closest you have been to being caught?" And he replied with something like, "When I was dragging a body across a trail, and I heard someone coming, so I left the body and hid in the bushes, and they stepped on the body."
That's a pretty eerie story. It's wild to think about what can happen in the dark. Just stepping on something unexpected can change everything in a moment. Bundy's experience really makes you think about those close calls. It's like a scene from a movie, where one decision could lead to a different outcome. It's both chilling and fascinating how those moments unfold without us knowing.
I was driving back to a lodge in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi that I was staying at with a few coworkers. This was very late at night, as I was coming back from spending all evening in actual civilization 40 minutes away. I had been on dirt roads for a while in pitch black, and suddenly came across a cop car with its lights off at an intersection of two dirt roads, and one lone cop standing in the center with a flashlight. I got totally freaked out and sped up and went right past him without stopping. No idea what that guy was doing out there. I wasn't sure it was even a real cop. I later found out from the news that there was a murderer dressing as a fake cop with a fake cop car shooting people. Who knows if this was the guy, or if perhaps it was a real cop keeping an eye out. Mississippi is a weird place, and I won't return.
That sounds pretty unsettling. Driving late at night on those dirt roads can already be creepy. Coming across a cop like that, especially with everything going on, would definitely make anyone nervous. It's wild to think it could have been a real cop or something way more sinister. I get why you wouldn't want to go back to Mississippi after an experience like that. Just an intense reminder to stay aware out there.
Me and a group of other summer camp counselors occasionally take walks around camp down old paths in the forest that haven't been used in a long time. The camp was founded in the 1920s, so it's quite old, and a lot has been forgotten. One night we were walking down a path and came to some opening that we'd never seen before. It was a small field with no branching off paths. In the center was just a simple kids' table, one that little girls use for tea parties. It was surrounded by 4 chairs all pushed in. It was also covered in a bunch of leaves, which was weird because it wasn't under any trees. No one had any idea how it got there. A few weeks later we came back, and all the chairs were gone and the leaves were brushed off. Just a table in the middle of the field. None of us have gone back since.
That sounds pretty unsettling. Finding an old kid's table like that in the middle of nowhere is already strange. But then to go back and see the chairs gone? That's just creepy. I can imagine how you all felt. It's one of those things that just sticks with you. Sometimes it's better to leave certain places alone, especially when they start to give off weird vibes. Just a camp story to keep everyone on their toes.
Didn't see but heard. Was parked at the end of a gravel country road that was near a cave with my fiancée, making out when I heard really heavy breathing. I looked at her, and she looked at me, and we both realized that it wasn't either of us. Scooted into the driver's seat as fast as I could while grabbing my pistol, dropped it into drive, and sped out of there. We've been married for 16 years, and still bring it up every now and then. No idea who or what it was, but it made the hair on the back of my neck stand up.
That's a pretty intense moment. Sounds like you both were really caught off guard. Just the idea of something unknown lurking nearby can mess with your head. It's wild how those moments stick with you, even after years. I guess places like that have a vibe that can make you feel uneasy. It must have been a big rush to get out of there. Definitely a story to tell.
One time when I was maybe 8 or 9, we were driving through the woods when we saw this guy on the side of the road. He was wearing like a dressing gown, and he was holding a teddy bear or a pillow or some kind of stuffed toy. He was just staring into traffic from the side of the road, and we all freaked out after we drove past him. We called the police when we got home because he could have been some old guy who escaped from a nursing home or something, but it was still really fucking creepy.
That is a pretty wild story. I can imagine being in the car and seeing that. It would definitely raise some questions. Seems like your group made the right call by contacting the police. Stuff like that stays with you. It's strange how moments like that can feel so unsettling. Just a random encounter that feels off. I guess it's the unknown that makes it so creepy.
I found a human skeleton in the 1980s while I was doing a land survey on a 100-acre wooded parcel. At first I just noticed some scattered bones and did not think a lot about it because animals die in the woods all the time. But when I saw the skull laying there, the the creep factor shot way up on the creep meter. Turned out to be an old man who had dementia and had wandered away from home several years before. So at least his family got closure.
That's a pretty wild find. Just doing a normal job and stumbling across something like that must have been surreal. I can't imagine the initial shock when you realized it wasn't just animal bones. But it's kind of a relief that the family could finally get some answers after all that time. Makes you think about how many stories are hidden in the woods.
I was staying with my aunt, uncle, and cousin in 2008, and we got invited to a 50th wedding anniversary. It was being held on a golf course / country estate, kind of place a little out of the way. My cousin drove me and her there, and my aunt and uncle left about half an hour before us. We got onto the country lane that leaves our town, a two-way road with no pavement and woods on either side. There were no other cars around. All of a sudden, walking on the opposite side of the road, in the same direction we were going, was what appeared to be a WW2-era evacuee child, wearing a navy blue peaked hat, navy blue rucksack, gray shorts, and gray socks pulled up to the knees. We both reacted at the same time, saying something like, "Oh my God, what the fuck?" We doing about 40 miles per hour, so we weren't going really fast or anything. We both got a good look, and we both saw the exact same thing. It was nighttime, by the way, pitch black, other than the lights of my cousin's car. I consider this to be my only paranormal experience. It was very, very creepy.
That sounds pretty intense. I've heard of similar stories where people see things they can't explain. It can really mess with your head. Driving at night, you don't expect to see a kid like that, especially dressed in old-fashioned clothes. It's the kind of moment that sticks with you. Makes you wonder about what's out there. Definitely a unique experience for sure, and not one you forget easily.
First post I'm making on Reddit. Went walking in our little woods, not far from my house. Go figure. Because I was feeling a little down, and walks are always nice. There's a long path that eventually led to a smaller ditch and then lead to the next road over. While I'm walking, and I shit you not, on the other side of the ditch is a little girl I've never seen before. I'm still on the path, not yet by the ditch, and I see her just standing there, white dress, black hair, and everything. Straight out of your typical horror movie. I'm not the bravest soul, but for some reason I just turned around and walked home. Not sure why I didn't run for my life. Also walking the same path before seeing the girl. I had made it to the ditch and had time to relax out there. Decided to head home, and on the other side, a dark human figure ran through the trees as if it was watching me. That time I ran.
That sounds pretty unsettling. Encountering a little girl like that in a creepy setting is definitely a horror trope come to life. It's odd how a place can shift from calm to eerie in an instant. The dark figure adds to the whole vibe. You probably felt a mix of confusion and fear, which made you hesitate. I guess some situations hit differently. Sometimes it's best just to get out of there.
I once passed a man in backwoods Tennessee who was parked on the side of the road. I had slowed down to possibly help, as the guy was rooting in his trunk for what I assumed was a tire or jack or such, and it was starting to get dark. Nope, right as I slowed down, dude pulls a chainsaw out of his trunk and turns around towards me. I noped right on out of there.
That sounds pretty intense. It's weird how quickly things can go from a simple gesture of kindness to a sketchy situation. A chainsaw in the middle of nowhere? Definitely not what you expect. It's smart that you didn't stick around to find out what he was up to. Sometimes it's better to trust your gut and just keep driving.
I still find this very hard to believe to this day. About 20 years ago, I was in a car with two friends. It was late in the night, maybe 3 a.m. or so, because we snuck out of our respective houses to smoke weed. We were driving around in the middle of nowhere, northern Ohio. We had not yet smoked. None of us was drinking nor using other drugs. The night was perfectly clear and fogless, but we drove through a patch of fog in the middle of the road that was shaped exactly like a man and a woman dressed in something like Oliver Twist garb. We drove directly through them. I couldn't believe it. I was already preparing to be in denial about it when my one friend turned to the other one who was driving and asked if he just saw that, to which the driving friend responded, "Yeah."
That sounds pretty wild. I mean, seeing what looked like people in old clothes in the fog and it being real enough for your friends to see too is just strange. Sometimes, the mind plays tricks on us, but having two others confirm it is something else. Makes you wonder what you actually experienced that night. It's one of those stories that stick with you.
When I was maybe 5 years old, I walked out into the wooded area behind my house and found a hole about 2 inches in diameter in the dirt. I looked into it and saw what looked like something the shape of an asterisk that looked kind of rubbery and slimy. I got it in my head that it was some kind of massive tentacle mesh monster that spread under the ground that would rise up through the dirt and kill me if I disturbed it, and freaked out running back to the house and never went back behind that house again. We moved not long after. In retrospect, it was probably some plastic toy.
I had a similar experience when I was a kid. One time, I found a weird-looking rock in my backyard. It had these strange patterns, and I convinced myself it was a piece of a meteor. I was so scared something would happen if I touched it. I just left it there for weeks. Looking back, it was probably just a regular rock. Funny how our imagination works at that age.
Not the middle of nowhere, but my town woods has a field bordered by small pine trees that have paths through them. They're only 20 feet tall and pretty scrawny, but you walk in there and it's like dusk, even on sunny days. I was back there a few weeks ago and found discarded sleeping bags in a tent. One of the sleeping bags was half packed up, like someone tried to put it away and left it. One of them was torn to shreds. There was also some clothes scattered around, and the tent was broken. The closest thing we have to a large predator here is coyotes, and those are pretty small. I don't know what caused those people to stop packing and run, but I definitely don't want to find out. Especially scary because those woods are a 5-minute walk from my house.
Sounds like a pretty eerie spot. The woods definitely have a vibe when it's dim, even during the day. Finding those sleeping bags in the tent is unsettling. You have to wonder what happened there. Makes you think twice about wandering too close. I mean, the idea of someone packing up in a hurry is kind of unnerving, especially with coyotes around. I get why you'd feel uneasy about it.
Bicycling along a paved trail after dark, get startled by some bats, a couple of young raccoons, when I see a bloody leg propped up on a low branch of a bush about 15 feet away from the trail. Imagine if you're laying on your back with your feet up on something. I got to the nearest lighted portion of the trail and called the police from my cell phone, tell them where it's at, etc. Officer actually called me an hour later to tell me it was a homeless guy with some sort of laceration who'd laid down for a nap and propped his bleeding leg up in the air to dry. He needed stitches.
That's a wild situation. Biking in the dark can be unsettling, especially with those little surprises. Seeing a bloody leg must have been shocking. You did the right thing by calling the police. It's a strange scenario, though. Just a guy trying to take care of a wound. Glad he got help. Makes you think about how people deal with their injuries. Always something unexpected on a night ride.
Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.